Hello everyone, welcome to our series of the motivational interview. Today we have Dr. Carol Raymond with us. She did her doctorate from the New York, and she has the expertise in the surface processes, and she was also the deputy PI of the Dawn mission, which went to Vesta and Ceres, and that is also the part of my PhD project as well. And she received numerous awards from NASA throughout her career. So I would really welcome you today for our interview. I'm so glad you could take time from your busy schedule.
Thank you.
So I would just start with the usual like the question. You studied geoscience as your major, and then you started involving in the planetary science. So in earlier time, obviously the Apollo mission and everything happened, but when someone studied geoscience, they used to use you literally go into the earth science field, but you chose to go into the planetary science. What was the motivation behind that?
Well, first of all, Rutu, thank you for inviting me. Delighted to be here and share some of my background and experiences. I actually started out studying geology and geophysics, and I was really liked physics, and I thought geophysics was a very interesting field, and one where you could go out and observe the natural world, which is something that I really enjoy, and and combine all of the physical basis of the processes you're observing into the explanations. True. and just trying to ferret out what's going on, the detective work. And that always appealed to me. So when I was an undergrad, I was studying geophysics. I had a combined degree in geology and physics, and then I went to grad school. And my main interest was in marine geophysics, which is studying the ocean floor, interpreting all the data to understand Earth's plate tectonics. That was the main thrust of my research. But I was using the magnetic field recordings in the ocean crust to read the history of plate motions, and that led me to using satellite data. The MagSat satellite had been launched in 1979, so this is a brand new data set, and I dove into that and was able to both study how the Earth's magnetic field had changed with time, as recorded in these long wavelength variations, as well as the short period variations, which told us about the motions of the plates. So it's kind of doing all of these things in a synthesized way. And in that way, I was studying geodynamics of how does the Earth's internal processes, convective processes work, and how do they change over time, and things like whether hotspots are fixed in the mantle and where do hotspots come from. These were the types of problems that I was interested in. So in some sense, I would say I was doing planetary science on the Earth, using the tools of potential fields, magnetic fields, gravity fields, and just surface observations. But this led me to JPL, where I was interested in participating in joint NASA ESA missions to continue to refine the measurement of the Earth's field from space, the Earth's magnetic field from space. Those missions never came to fruition, but in the meantime, the magnetic field of Mars was mapped.
Okay, yeah.
And now this was just fantastic. I was just blown away by seeing the crustal anomaly map, and I had been studying the crustal anomalies of Earth. So it was just a natural fit to study Mars. And of course, now I was surrounded by planetary scientists at JPL. So both all of my interactions with colleagues, learning more about Mars from them, and then applying my own expertise to this new data set, just sort of sucked me away. and then I became really fascinated by other planetary bodies, and also missions to Mars to continue to refine our understanding of the magnetic field there and the history. So I did do some work with Mars, but in the meantime was collaborating with people about making these magnetic measurements of other planetary bodies, and ended up collaborating with Chris Russell on the Dawn mission.
Yeah.
So we actually, we both had proposals in this discovery round. Mine was, I was leading to take a magnetometer to Mars, and Chris was on my proposal, and then he invited me to be the deputy PI of Dawn. And of course we know Dawn succeeded.
Wonderfully.
And so it was a lesson, or I think that the lesson to be learned there is to not get stuck. The best piece of advice I ever got was from Walter Pittman, who was one of the guys who came up with the first evidence that really proved plate tectonics. And he just was so insightful. And he said, you have your PhD, you have a license to think. And don't, limit yourself. Don't think, oh, I'm the expert of this, and so I will continue, to make progress down that path for the rest of my career. And it's not that I wouldn't have done that, but it was, it really did keep resonating with me that you stay a little flexible and follow the path of your interest, and bring your unique expertise to bear on whatever the problems of the day are, right? Yeah. So getting on the Dawn mission was really a turning point in my career, and now I'm the small bodies program manager at JPL. That's and back then I really didn't have much to do with small bodies. So things have evolved quite a bit, and that's a testament to just being flexible and evolving. So the Dawn mission, which, by the way, I did get elevated to be the PI of the second extended mission, which was also a big honor.
Yes, that's lovely.
Was such a learning experience for me. And the thing that strikes me as the most significant part of that experience, of course the science was fabulous, and the excitement of seeing a place for the first time, and and interacting with the community, presenting new results. All those things are so thrilling. But one of the things that I got that I didn't really appreciate until I experienced it was working in a highly functional team. When everybody is working together and in a collaborative way and in a respectful way, great things can happen.
Great things can come out.
So that was probably one of the main takeaways for that.
So as you said, you have been associated with Dawn, let's say, just since the beginning of the mission till now. And you also have associated, you starting your career in Mars. So what was the most significant, I would say, discoveries or the science you came across throughout, which is still, keeping you to work ahead, exploring the new things, or motivating you, like something which is still as fresh in your memory?
Certainly was approaching Ceres and seeing this bright, blinding spot on the surface. I was really interested in Ceres because, as I said, my background coming from geodynamics, and I'd taken a little detour studying the dynamics of the ice sheets, the polar ice sheets on Earth, basically the rebound of the crust to the weight of the ice sheet, and being able to understand then the past ice sheet history. So I was very interested in how Ceres was responding to loads on the surface, and whether this ice crust could retain any crater morphology over time, and we were going to be able to probe the materials, or the rheology, the physical properties of the crust by the crater record. And my concern was that it was going to be smooth, look like a cue ball, and we're going to have a really hard time trying to understand it. So we approached, and not only could we see the surface had many interesting features and certainly had craters, and then this blinding bright spot, it was just it was like, hold on, because this world is not what we expected, and it's going to be fabulous, and it has been. And then further understanding and really knowing. I mean, think about if we had done a distant flyby of Ceres, and we had seen that feature, and we'd still all be, coming up with wild theories about what it meant. But to be able to then go and really look at this body in such detail and such depth, and now we know we can ferret out the process by which this kind of exotic sodium carbonate is getting to the surface, which has so many implications for astrobiology and is unique from on Ceres and Enceladus and the Earth, and so highly significant. And then understanding the processes by which material is moving around from the interior of Ceres to the surface and exchanging, and what a dynamic place it was. I mean, we started out calling Vesta and Ceres fossils from the early solar system, and I think we could say Vesta is more or less a fossil from the early solar system, and Ceres is a living, breathing, body in the outer solar system. So that was certainly the really big, exciting discovery for me.
I'm so glad to hear this from you. So throughout your whole professional career, there's always tough days, and there are always days where we have we start questioning ourselves sometimes, because that happens with me most of the time. So then have you ever come across this kind of self-doubt or tough days, and how did you keep yourself so positive? Because I can see when you are talking about Ceres, you're so excited, so much energetic. How those things happen?
Yeah, so there certainly have been not so great times. My main period where I was unsure of what to do, I wouldn't say it was self-doubt, it was kind of which direction to go, was that when I came to the Jet Propulsion Lab, my intent was not to stay there, but to work several, whatever period of time, learn a lot, and then move on to a university. That's what my goal was, earn university professorship. And at about year 5, or coming up on year 5, it occurred to me that I was having so much fun, and it was so fulfilling, and I was learning so much by being able to walk into somebody's office and talk to them about how an attitude control system works, because that was a critical part of trying to design a certain experiment. And you realize that you could access this incredible breadth of knowledge and experience. So one day I was driving into work, and I said, why am I looking for a job somewhere else? I should just stay here.
Right.
And from that point on, it was it was just really exciting, and a lot of good things happened. But all along the way, there have been times when I've run across an obstacle, and many times it has to do with how people perceive you, or whether they're ready to accept you as their colleague, peer, give you a certain responsibility, things like that, and you feel like maybe it's not working out great for you with this person or in this situation. And what I tried to do in those cases was just work around it. So it's kind of like, find the solution. Don't bang your head against the brick wall. Find the solution, work around the problems, stay confident in yourself and your goals, and then just keep moving forward.
This is really wonderful piece of advice, because sometimes we do struggle a lot, and I'm really excited and see how did you survive throughout your career, and I'm so glad that you're ready to make some time and sit down with us for this interview. So thank you so much. Thank you for giving all these pieces, and thank you for sharing your story. And we really wish you good luck for all these future missions.
Yep.
And
thank you very much.
Thank you.